Hi, this is Chris, Logos Apologia. I'm making a reply to MIJ. MIJ, thanks for your video. Boy, you really rifled that off pretty fast there in rapid fire. Under 5 minutes, you addressed all facts. That's good. A lot of people haven't been able to address all five, and I appreciate you taking the time to make your video, and it looks like you've given it some thought and some investigation, and that's good. I'm going to go through a few notes that I made on your video. I noticed you concede fact one, fair enough. That's fact two. One thing that caught my ear right off the bat is you mentioned something like the disciples' expectation, the reigning in of God's kingdom, which would include the resurrection of the dead. Now that's not really the case. What the Jews believed in the first century was a general resurrection of the dead at the culmination of history. They didn't really have a category for a single man resurrecting. If you look at Daniel in the Old Testament, Daniel chapter 12 verse 2, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. This is what the Jewish resurrection belief was. There really was no category that the Messiah was going to be killed and resurrect. They came to see this later, but at the time of the event, the disciples certainly were not expecting Jesus' resurrection. Now, you might not accept what the Gospels say, but I mean, let's think. If you think it through a little bit, from all indications in the Gospels, they had run and they were hiding, they were scared, and Peter had even denied Jesus. This is unlikely of an invention. I mean, if the skeptical account is coherent. And generally, you guys would say that this all stuff got made up after the fact later on, or it's a product of legendary development. Now, if you're going to develop a legend, why are you going to paint yourself as a coward and somebody who doesn't get what's going on? These just aren't the kind of things that people make up. It's just too embarrassing. These were the leaders of the early church, but I mean, they really don't come across as having it all together at all in the Gospels. Let's see, the next thing, you talk about visions. And this is what, a lot of people come up with, due to bereavement, things like that. I'll admit that people that lose someone they love often do probably hallucinate. But these are not group experiences. I can't wake my wife up in the middle of the night and say, honey, I'm having a great dream about Hawaii. Why don't you go back to sleep and meet me there? We'll just have a free vacation. That doesn't really work that way. And what we hear the disciples saying is that he appeared to them in groups. Now, what else are they saying? If you look in Acts, Luke is regarded by even skeptical scholars as a very good historian. In fact, Sir William Ramsay, a 19th century archaeologist, set out to disprove the book of Acts. He thought it was fiction. And every time he checked something out, it confirmed it. And it confirmed things that people didn't even know. And he ended up converting. And said that Luke was a historian of the first rate. I'll put a little annotation here for a little explanation on Sir William Ramsay. Interesting character. But what do we find in Acts? Peter is recorded as saying in chapter 10, verses 40 and 41, but God raised him on the third day and made him to appear, not to all people, but to us who God had chosen by God as witnesses, who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead. So, what they believed, now the minimal fact is that they believed it, and that's it. I'm not saying this is a fact, but the fact is that they really believed this. And this is what they were saying. They weren't saying they saw a vision. You really haven't addressed that fact, because the content of what they believed was not that they saw a vision. Now, in 3, with Paul, I thought it was a little weird that you said he interpreted his vision through a Christian lens. Okay, he was a Pharisee. That was the opposite lens that he would interpret it through. He was not expecting to see Jesus. There's no indication that he felt any guilt whatsoever while he was doing it. His guilt was after the fact. He didn't have a Christian lens. He had no category for that. Christians were a crazy cult that he was trying to get rid of. So that's just kind of incoherent to say that Paul interpreted his vision through a Christian lens. He didn't have that lens. What triggered James? Now, this is kind of just a logical inference to the best explanation. If you look at Mark chapter 3, verse 21, his family went out to seize him, saying he's out of his mind. James is never a character in the Gospels. All that we ever hear is that his family assumes that he's crazy. Then we have very early testimony that he appeared to James in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, that oral creed, which I've done a video on. I'll put an annotation to that. It comes up over and over again because it's really the earliest testimony to the resurrection. But okay, we have an early appearance. Then he's a leader in the church. He appears in Acts as a leader in the church. And then Josephus records James's martyrdom. So we have really good reasons to believe that James converted due to an appearance. Now, on the empty tomb, you don't want to believe that Jesus had a tomb. You're saying he got thrown in a common grave or something like that. But if we look at the details, again, unlikely inventions. So there really is a good case to be made that it's historical, because Joseph of Arimathea is a Pharisee. Now, if we're concocting a legend and creating characters, why would the early church pick someone who was their enemy, the Pharisees, as a sympathetic character that provided Jesus' Jesus' grave? So it's an unlikely invention. Now, the discovery of the tomb by women, again, unreliable witnesses in the patriarchal society, unlikely invention. So, but really, the most compelling argument for the empty tomb being a reality is that the earliest Jewish response was that the disciples stole the grave. And that's a tacit admission that the tomb is empty. Now, we don't have to just rely on Matthew's account of that, because by the 2nd century, Christian apologists were writing letters in reply to the Jewish leaders' accusations. Now, these Pharisees that were making the accusations had every opportunity to have first-hand knowledge whether the tomb was empty or not. If Jesus had been thrown in a common grave, they would be saying that. We don't have any record or anybody saying that in the 1st, 2nd century. What we do have them saying is that the disciples stole the body, and that's a tacit admission of an empty tomb. So, there's really good reasons to accept the empty tomb. You also say there's no evidence that there was ever a tomb at all, and that's really not true, because the site of the tomb that's called the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem has a lot of archaeological evidence that's compelling. We can't prove for 100%, but the argument against it used to be that it was inside the city wall. Well, Kathleen Kenyon, an archaeologist, did some excavations and found out that the city wall in the 1st century was actually further in, and this tomb would have been outside. The tombs around that area that they've discovered all date to the 1st century, so it's in the right time. The other thing is that we have a Roman emperor named Hadrian. Now, what he liked to do was build pagan monuments over holy sites of other religions. And we've discovered that there is a pagan altar that was built right over the top of where the Holy Sepulchre site is. Now, why would he build that? There was something there. And we have the historian Eusebius writing, I think in the 4th century, that he constructed it over the Holy Cave. So there's really compelling evidence that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is actually the actual tomb that Jesus resurrected from. So those are some things to consider. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you making your video. The reason why I'm doing this is because I truly believe it is a historical fact that Jesus did rise from the grave. And by believing in that and saying Jesus is Lord, that you can have eternal life. You have to sort of step out in faith. You do. But if you do, God responds to that. If you come to God with a humble heart and you ask Him to reveal Himself to you, you might be surprised. Thank you.